Hello weirdos! Welcome back to my channel. My name is EmmaAbe and we're outside today because I thought it would be a nice day outside, but no, it's hot as balls. But you know what? It's actually not as hot as it could be. Upstairs where I normally film in my room, it is a lot hotter. And we have the baby with us. She's just cuddling. Do you want to sit over here? You want to sit over there so they can see you? Yeah, look at that. She jumped. She's such a smart girl. Come here. Yeah, oh, she's so cute. So she's just gonna sit there. And I'm doing a tag. I'm doing the mid-year freak out tag. This tag, everybody does it. We all know it, but we know the original creators were Chammy and Ellie. Not sure if they're still active, but I will leave what I can find in the description down below. No one specifically tagged me, but everybody knows this tag. So if you want to do this tag, feel free. One thing I try to do in these tags is challenge myself to talk not all about the same books and to not reuse books. So yeah, so the first question is, what is the best book that you've read so far? And I try not to like quantify like my books like that, but I did choose one that I really liked and gave it pretty much a 5-star right after reading it. That only happened to about 5 books so far this year. So let me show you that book. I have it in my giant pile over here. That book is Light from Uncommon Stars. This is by Rika Aoki. This is a book that I read for my Goodreads Choice Awards challenge thing, one that I picked up for my choice, and I really loved it. I loved the trans representation, but beyond that, I also just loved the musical representation. That's a huge part of this book, is how music intersects with everything. It's sapphic. Yeah, it's just a really good book that I wasn't expecting to like as much as I did, and I don't really want to give you a whole spiel about this because we've got a lot of books to get through, so we're gonna keep moving. I thought about doing something with all of my stats and like actually showing you my stats, but I realized that I could do that on my phone, which I'm recording on, or I could do it on my computer, and I didn't want to have to bring my computer out there. But as far as like stats for the number of books that I've read so far as of the day of filming, which is July 19th, I've read 96 books, which is like, I think, pretty cool. The books in the 90s, like when I hit 90 books, which was earlier in July, I wasn't expecting it, so it kind of came out of left field, and one day I was just checking and it was like, oh, you've read like 91 books, and I was like, what the fuck? So yeah, that's how many books that I've read so far, but let's keep going with the questions. So the second question is the best sequel. So I'm going to be honest, I haven't been reading a lot of sequels. I mean, I'm reading a lot of sequels right now because I'm just trying to get through series that I've started, but I haven't finished a lot of them. A lot of them are just kind of in progress. And of the sequels that so I think I've read like maybe 2 or 3 sequels this entire like year, other than like my giant quest to get through all of the books that I'm going through right now. So out of those, a lot of the sequels that I was reading, I wasn't really grooving with. It was just books that I had to get through to get to another book in the series. That being said, there was one that was a standout to me. I really should have set up these books better. But that is The Grandmaster of Demonic Cultivation. This is by Mo-Shan Tongxiu, and I really like this. I really like the characters. I think we got a lot more dramatic stuff happening in this book versus the last book. But to be fair, I have read this before this year, so but this is the first year that I actually had this physical translation and this copy, so I don't really know if we're going to be counting that against me or not. This was probably the only one that I could think of to fit. The other sequels that I've read that Mo-Shan Tongxiu has written, I haven't really liked as much as this one, and I've only read one other. The next prompt is a new release that you would like to read, and I'm not entirely sure of how new of a release this is, but it's only one that I've heard of recently. Like I think literally I heard about it like 2 days ago, and then I saw it in a bookstore and I picked it up. And that would be Gilded by Marissa Meyer. I picked this up from Half Price Books literally yesterday. I really like Marissa Meyer's twisted fairy tales. I've been on a huge binge recently. I read this storybook collection of just a bunch of different twisted fairy tales, And I'm a sucker for twisted fairy tales. I love them. Usually I think they're done really well, and I find them really interesting because I like to see how fairy tales and stories we grew up with are reimagined. And that kind of goes along with lore and mythology and story, like just stories in general, like tales that we've grown up with twisted. So this one is a twisted retelling of Rumpelstiltskin. And I know I remember reading more about this one, but this is Marissa Meyer's great return to twisted fairy tales, so I'm really excited for that, and I can't wait to read this and see what she does with it. Most anticipated release in, I guess, the upcoming year, and I'm not exactly sure when this comes out, but it is either coming out in the second half of next year or has already come out. Come here. They want to see you. They want to see your cute face. Yeah. So that would be The Husky and His White Cat Shizen. That is by Meat Bun Doesn't Eat Meat, and technically it's volume 1. I think this one takes the cake over anything written by MXTX. That is because I wasn't expecting it to be released and to get an official English translation. I remember looking at the original website where the translator, where, you know, fan translators were putting up chapters, and they were putting up chapters once a month. They stopped for a while, and people were like, what the heck? But then we got the announcement that this book was going to come out sometime, I think in 2020, late 2022 or early 2023. And I guess I was just really excited about it because I really want to engage with this story. I'm really excited for the release of the TV show. Unfortunately, I don't know if the TV show will ever be released, which is really, really sad, because China's going through a little bit of a homophobic phase. I mean, the CCP is kind of always in a homophobic phase. Unfortunately, it's just really hitting this property and the story really hard, and I'm really glad that it does have an English translation now, official one, that is going to be coming out, so I will be able to engage in, like, the fandom spaces a little bit more easily than I can right now. Because anyway, so that's why that one takes a cake over anything that MXTX has written, just because I knew all of her stuff was coming out. It's all coming out, so I could really say any one of her novels that is getting another volume released would probably fit into this category. The Husky and His White Cat just really took the cake because I was not expecting it. I'm really excited about it though. The biggest disappointment, or that I'd have to say, probably the entirety of the Shadow and Bone series. It's not to say that I didn't, like, hate it. It just wasn't for me. I didn't really get the hype surrounding it. I do like Leigh Bardugo's writing. I really enjoyed Ninth House. I'm really excited to see the sequel for Ninth House, whenever that comes out. Yeah, I just found the entire, like, series to just be a little bit disappointing given the amount of hype that is surrounding it, and I honestly probably would not have finished the series if I didn't have to read it for my Goodreads Choice project. So that's kind of the tea on that. I am continuing in the Krishaverse because I have to for my Goodreads Choice project. I'm hoping that the start of, like, the Six of Crows duology will be just a little bit better taste in my mouth. I'm hoping that I will like that one better because that's what a lot of people say, that series is better. So we'll see. But yeah, that is my answer on that one. The biggest surprise is next, and it was recommended to me by the Storygraph, and I looked at the cover, and the cover just kind of left a lot to be imagined. I didn't really have a good sense of what it was going to be, what the story was going to be about, and all the descriptions tend to focus a lot on Tiananmen Square, and which really isn't that big a part of the story. It's just kind of an event that happens. It's overall really focused on the relationship between our two characters, and that would have to be Beijing Comrades by Bei Tong. This also doesn't have an audiobook, so that's another thing that kind of made it initially made me a little bit hesitant on how much I was going to enjoy it, just because of the amount of effort that it would take for me to read this. Yeah, this just kind of blew me out of the water. I loved it. I was screaming. I almost freaking cried. I got really close to crying, but I didn't. And this is just the story of two gay men in Beijing who are who are falling in love and dealing with what it is like to be a gay man in Beijing in the 80s, with all of the political turmoil. And I really liked it. I really enjoyed it. I do not understand why people don't read it. I think it is a pivotal book in the world of danmei and in the world of Chinese gay literature, and it really ushered in this modern like wave of Chinese like gay literature. And I'm just really glad that I read it, I found it, and can't believe more people on the internet are not talking about it. Anyway, I really loved it, and this definitely was one of the books that I read and I was like, okay, this is definitely going to probably be one of the best books that I have read this year. And that has still proven to be true. So yeah, okay. The next prompt is new favorite author, and there's a lot of really good authors that I was reading from, and I was thinking back to what authors kind of have a large canon that I could easily fall in love with as the more and more I read their books. Because I've read a lot of really good authors so far this year that have only had like 1 or 2 releases. So in my opinion, they don't really have a big enough canon of stuff to really become like a favorite author. Like in Beijing Comrades, Beitong really only wrote Beijing Comrades, so I couldn't really consider that in the running for this category. And I was also thinking about what are the authors that I've read that I'm going to be compelled to read more of their stories in the future based off of the story that this one book that I have read. And for that, doing a lot of like soul searching and thinking, I decided that Charlotte Bronte is that author for me this year. I read this book, Jane Eyre, real recently. It's the first Bronte sister novel that I have read. I just realized that I have been sleeping on the Bronte sisters, and I haven't read any of the other Bronte sisters' work, but if they're anything similar to what Charlotte Bronte does, then I am really excited. And you know, it's the Bronte sisters, they have a decent canon and it's a classic, so I am just very excited to read more of the Bronte sisters. I have a couple more of their stuff, but I have a feeling that Charlotte Bronte's work is stuff that I'm going to enjoy reading in the future, and that's kind of why that she was my new favorite author so far this year. 8 is newest fictional crush. Not applicable to me. I'm not going to explain that. That's not how I work. The next prompt is the newest favorite character. I wasn't really sure where to go. There was a couple ones that I thought about that I've read recently that I've already featured their books on this list or will, so I couldn't talk about them. So the book / character that I've decided to go with, kind of cheating a little bit because it's 2, but that's Shen Qingqiu and Luo Binghe, and they're the 2 characters on the top of this. Really liked their dynamics. I like how Shen Qingqiu is kind of thrust into this world that he doesn't understand. They're both very comedic about it. So Shen Qingqiu sometimes is just a little bit oblivious as to the source of his feelings and why his feelings are differing from the original character's feelings. It's too complicated of a thing to explain. And so when Luo Binghe confronts him in the second book, which I'm reading right now, his response is to jump out a fucking window. And that I find really funny, especially because these 2, Shen Qingqiu and Luo Binghe, are both like in love with each other. So I thought that response was like very funny. And so I just think there's a lot of comedy in their interactions and how they talk to each other. Luo Binghe, I think, is a very interesting character. He grew up abused and sort of shunned for who he was, and he's dealing with a lot of things, but I think he can also be quite comical and he can be very swashbuckly, if that makes any sense, and also a little bit arrogant about his affections, and he can wear his affections and his flirtations on his sleeve. Yeah, I really enjoyed both characters. yeah, so that's the answer to that. So the next prompt is a book that made you cry. And this is actually the most recent book that I've read that's made me cry, meaning I read it in July. Yeah, and that would be The House in the Cerulean Sea by T.J. Klune. This is another book where I read it and I was like, okay, this is automatically going to get 5 stars from me because it was just that good. Yeah, I thought it was very cute, and the speech at the end that one of the characters gives, it just brought tears to my eyes. This is a very popular book on the internet for good reason, I think, and my library is actually doing a discussion of this in a couple of days, and so I'm going to participate in that discussion, and I'm just really excited. It's going to be a fun time. So yeah, that one made me cry. The next prompt is a book that made you happy. That I chose Genderqueer. This is by Maya Doby, and I just felt so seen and validated and had the experience, like an experience of euphoria while I was reading this. Also made me cry. So yeah, another really good book. Yeah, it's a very personal reason to why it made me happy. Lot to deal with my own personal gender journey. Yeah, that's my pick for this. Next prompt is a beautiful book that you bought. I think that a lot of these books that I've shown you is pretty beautiful, but I just figured that I would choose some that I haven't read to just sort of highlight that I've bought in like the last 6-7 months. The first one that I'm going to show you is Master of Poisons. This is by Andrea Harrison. I just really like yellow mixed with the honeycomb shape, and I just think it all complements itself really nicely, and it looks really nice. And it's a bold color too, and I think it pulls it off. And the other one that I'm gonna kind of highlight is Asimov's Foundation, but this specific edition, I really like just all the pattern that the red lines create. You can see a little bit better, and I just like the geometry to it. And again, it's a just a very bold color, and I just really like it. I think it's very aesthetically pleasing to me. Come here. Yeah. Yeah. All right, so the very last prompt is what's a book that you have to read by the end of the year. So I'm just going to kind of go through a bunch really quickly because I got a lot. So I got some that I definitely have to read by the end of the year, and that is stuff from my Goodreads project. So let's just go through them. These are really in no particular order. So we have Crooked Kingdom by Leigh Bardugo. King of Stars, also by Leigh Bardugo. Rule of Wolves, also by Leigh Bardugo. Beautiful World, Where Are You by Sally Rooney. The Last Thing He Told Me by Laura Dave. Project Hail Mary by Andy Weir. Broken by Jenny Lawson. Daughters of the Deep by Rick Riordan. And One Last Stop by Casey McQuiston. Alright, so the next set of books are books that I don't really have to read by a specific time, but I just kind of would like to get the ball just sort of moving on reading them. These are books that were recommended to me by the Storygraph. So let's go through them. Imagined Communities by Benedict Anderson. The Three Body Problem by Cixin Liu. Ruins of Empire by Pinaki Mishra. Testosterone Rex by Cordelia Fine. Silver Phoenix by Cindy Pone. My Country, My People by Lin Yu Tang. Will the Boat Sink in the Water by Chen Guidi and Wu Chun Tao. Serpentine, also by Cindy Pone. Tiger Eye by Marjorie M. Liu, and Luck in the Shadows by Lynn Feldwing. This next set of books is books that I'm reading because my students have to read them, and I thought that it would be an interesting thing for us to like talk about. Point of connection, and not all of my students have to read all of these, so there you go. Depends on what classes that you have to take at the school that I'm going to be teaching at. And these I don't necessarily have to finish by the end of the year, but I would like to have them finished by the end of 2022-2023 school year. The Odyssey by Homer. Great Expectations by Charles Dickens. The Magnus by John Fowle. How to Be Drawn by Terrence Hayes. A History of the World in 6 Glasses by Tom Sandage. The Time of Butterflies by Julia Alvarez. In Small Things Forgotten by James Dietz. Black Dog of Fate by Peter Blink. The Dew Breaker by Eldridge Danicat. The Crooked Path to Abolition by James Oakes. The Lone Ranger and Tonto Fist Fight in Heaven by Sherman Alexie. World of Wonders by Amy Nezikomadil. I tried, sorry, it's a long word, could not decode it. Hey babe, you gotta sit on my lap, okay? Can you do that? Crime and Punishment by Fyodor Dostoevsky. The System by Robert B. Reich. The Instant Economist by Timothy Taylor. Never Caught. This is by Erica Armstrong Dunbar. When America First Met China by Eric J. Dolan. And lastly, Between the World and Me by Ta-Nehisi Coates. So there you go. That is my tag video. Let me know in the comments down below what you thought of any of these books. What is your answer for a book that you are excited to see in the upcoming year? And if you got it this far in the video, good for you. Put a little like sun emoji or something just to let me know that you were there if you don't really have anything to comment on. And baby's gonna say bye, and I'm gonna bring her inside before she dashes on my lap to go chase a squirrel. Bye-bye.